Welcome back to the channel. It has been a while since I've posted a video. A lot of that is due to just a crazy personal life. Bought a new house, which we're in the new garage, and got married and went on a honeymoon and did all kinds of stuff, which took me away from working on cars. But I'm hoping to get back to that now. In this video, we are going to be putting a Revo intake on my new daily driver, which is a 2016 Audi Q5. Not an SQ5 this time, but a B8.5 Q5 with the 3-liter supercharged V6 that I fell in love with on my first B8.5 SQ5. Not a lot of content on these Revo intakes. Looked around YouTube a fair amount, and I think I found one video installing this on an S4. Obviously, this is not an S4, and it is a bit different. This is going to be my second attempt. I actually had installed the intake and thought it didn't fit. Emailed the company I bought it from. They kind of explained to me that that's normal, which sort of sucks. So I am going to show you guys how to install this Revo intake properly on a Q5, which means adding an additional bracket for the heat shield to hold everything in place nicely, and a few other small tweaks. Let me show a quick unboxing and then we'll jump right into it here. All right, old intake is out. The first step here for the Revo intake, and I'm going off of the Revo directions, which are not very good. Let me call that out. So I'm going off their instructions plus just what I think is the right thing to do here. First step they call out is to take care of the breather. So we're gonna go ahead and do that before we get into kind of the modification steps here. So that includes taking this little breather filter, putting it into the housing here, snapping it into the breather pipe, and then using their P-clip and bracket and placing it in place of the factory airbox bracket here with a T30, the factory T30. So let me throw it on a time lapse and I'll show that process in action. Breather is in, so I kind of lied. I ended up modifying this. I don't know if it's because of the chassis that it's on or what, but this bracket that you basically go and attach to a P-clip to hold the whole breather assembly in does not want to sit flush against here. I could not find any way to make it sit flush, so what I ended up doing here was inserting some spacers I had from another project. It's just a little aluminum spacer about, I don't know, maybe 3/8 inch thick. With the spacer in there, then I used a longer bolt, same thread size that I had laying around, about 1 inch long, and tightened the whole thing down. And now this sits, you know, everything's kind of straight instead of cattywampus. So now that's done, we're gonna move to the heat shield, which I know for a fact needs some modification as well. Let's jump into that now. All right, so the next step here, according to the Revo instructions, is to remove the plug off of your factory airbox. So that's what I did. This is going to get inserted on the rearmost hole in the chassis, the frame rail bracket, to hold the Revo airbox in. Now the confusing thing is it gives you a rubber grommet to insert in there, and what I've determined is the grommet has threads in it. So you want to insert it thread side down. So this will be sitting like this in the chassis. The airbox will sit on top, and then you'll have your M6 bolt come down through. That'll obviously engage in the threads, and then this is how you tighten the airbox down from the back. It was a little difficult to get this inserted into the grommet, so I used some WD-40 and just some force and got it down in there. It's probably in there, I don't know, a ½ inch or so. So now this will go in the backmost mount, and then we'll work on the front mount for the heat shield. Cleaned up the bracket, now I'll get the heat shield in. Heat shield is in, fits very nicely around the factory scoop here, so you can see that. And my bolt went in, so things look good. It is fairly sturdy as is. My biggest gripe is they want you to take out the headlight bolt down here so it fits into that slot, and clearly that's not going to fit. I mean, you can't pull the heat shield closer to get it to fit on that bracket. It's also a little bit lower. It's hard to see from this angle. The response from the vendor I bought this from was just run it as is without that, but I don't like that. I like having 2 points for the heat shield to stay sturdy. My last intake on one of these was a CTS. Like CTS products for the most part, but that intake did not fit well whatsoever, and the heat shield was floppy. I don't like a floppy heat shield. So I'm going to make a bracket to connect those two together. That's probably the biggest fabrication you'll have to do with this kit. Probably just use a flat piece of metal that I have laying around, throw 2 holes in it. I might have to do a little spacer and then get that installed. Well, I got kind of lucky because I was looking around at all my kind of scrap metal and random brackets and angle iron and stuff like that, and I had this bracket from a project inside the house. It's already black, which is great, and the holes basically perfectly line up. It's kind of hard to see, but because that hole is slotted, the hole location is like perfect. So all I have to do is chop that side off with an angle grinder, maybe throw a little paint on that one end, and then bolt it in, and I'll have a bracket holding the second piece of the heat shield. All right, so here's the setup. This is, again, just a Home Depot, what do you call it, shelf bracket that I ended up cutting, which just luckily had the holes in the right position. I didn't feel like dealing with painting just that end that I used the angle grinder on to cut, so I ended up using black Sharpie, don't tell anyone. That goes right in there with a spacer, and you can see the holes line up perfectly. All right, here is the finished product. Revo, if you're listening, just include a little bracket like that. It makes things so much easier when you have a Q5 and you're trying to put this intake on. So now that this is installed, the heat shield's done, it is definitely way sturdier, and it kind of looks like it's supposed to be like that. All right, let's get the rest of the intake on now. All right, quick status update as I slowly regret my purchase. Install the intake pipe. You have a coupler, that's easy. Put that on, couple of clamps they provide, that's done. Intake pipe obviously slides into that, that's done. Filter slides onto that, that's done. All of that, okay. Big issue that I have with this intake is I bought it because I loved the fact that the intake is braced from the actual engine. My CTS intake, like this one does right now, kind of sat on the heat shield. Eventually it wears. It takes a while, but it can wear through the aluminum there, even with this plastic protection. So I was thinking, oh great, we have a bracket that holds this intake in place. If you can see, the heat shield's happy. It's happy where it is. It's happy with this scoop. So the heat shield itself really can't go down too far. And if you look at just kind of the different planes here, there is no way that this bracket is going to fit and bolt up to the bracket on the intake pipe. The only way would be if I put a gigantic spacer in there, which I think would kind of look shitty. I don't know how else to say it. So I just can't run this bracket now, which sucks, because again, I thought it looked cool and it was a functional piece of this intake. But I guess if you have a Q5, SQ5, number one, maybe don't buy this intake. Number two, you're not going to be able to run the Revo bracket. So what I did instead, this fuel line on most intakes just kind of flops around. What Revo actually wants you to do is install a fuel line relocation, which puts a new line in place of this and kind of routes it under the intake and around so there's no chafing. I just ended up using that bracket and putting a P-clamp in there to hold the fuel line, so at least it looks like the bracket on the intake pipe is kind of being used for something. Right now, everything is solid. It's not going anywhere. It is resting on the heat shield, but between, being clamped here, resting on the heat shield, and being clamped to that fuel line, the intake's not going anywhere. So I'm decently happy with it. It's just really frustrated that this intake is not fitting in multiple different spots. What I may do long term is there's a stud that comes off of the chassis here that holds this AC line on, and it looks like it'll line up pretty well with that bracket. So long term, I may build a bracket off of here, run it up under the intake pipe, and then just bring the intake pipe up ever so slightly, and that bracket will be what kind of holds it up off of the heat shield. So that's my plan long term. For now, this thing should be fine. One other weird thing is the Revo instructions say that you need to use this little T on the vacuum line in the back here, because the CREC engines, apparently this doesn't fit up. Well, guess what? My engine is not a CREC, and that line is not going to fit up. It looks like it'll fit up perfectly with the T, so I have to install that now. It's kind of like a crackhead either wrote the instructions or built this intake, or someone just built it for an S4 and then marketed it for everything in this platform, and realistically, like, this thing's kind of all over the place. Luckily, I have the T. I'll install that next. That's super easy, and this thing will be pretty much done. All right, we are all done. I got that vacuum line in right back there with the little T they provide. So again, with the T, that was fine. And if you pretend like it's supposed to fit this way and they never included a bracket to hold it to the supercharger, then hey, this is a great kit. I'm happy with the end result, but realistically, when you're paying for an intake, you shouldn't have to do this much fab work. So I don't think I would recommend buying this if you do have a Q5, Q7, or something outside of an S4. You basically end up paying for a bunch of stuff that you don't use, which doesn't make any sense. So I bought it because it was on sale, and I liked the kit based on the pictures. In reality, fitment was not great. It's too late for me to return it, so we're gonna go ahead and rock it. But now the important part, let's see how it sounds. I will leave you guys with a few sound clips. Thank you guys very much for watching. Lots more projects on this, as well as on my F87 M2. And I will be hopefully doing some type of garage build at this new property as well. So lots of content coming. Stay tuned. Thank you guys very much for watching.
What?